You're listening to Popcorn Poops, episode 97, in which we watch and discuss Richard Donner's 1985 film, Ladyhawke, for hashtag 80s Fantasy Month. If you'd like to sync this podcast episode up to the movie, go ahead and start the film and then press pause as soon as the title card reading Warner Brothers and 20th Century Fox Present fades away. We'll get things started here soon, but first, here's a word from our poo pals over at Soiled Restroom Cinema.
Hey Popcorn Poopers, this is Honor Knight from the award-winning Soiled Restroom Cinema podcast. Each week on SRC, we scour the bowels of Netflix, Vudu, Amazon Instant Video, and YouTube to bring you the absolute worst in streaming movies that Hollywood has to offer. New episodes plop into the Cinematic Bowl every Thursday, so when you're done pooping in your popcorn, head on over to signalsoffury.com and listen to us play with some cinematic turds for a while. We're here to flush it, so you don't have to see it.
We are the Popcorn Poops.
Welcome to Popcorn Poops, the best married couple movie podcast / commentary track hybrid audio program on the internet. My name is Jessica, and with me as always is my husband and co-host, Dustin.
Hi there. Hello.
How you doing today, Dustin?
I'm doing very well. Recording on a Saturday early afternoon. This is kind of an unusual time. I'm not used to like sunlight coming through the windows as we record because we typically do it at night, but hopefully we'll be fresher faced, brighter eyed, and bushier tailed than we usually are. But I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm usually more awake at night than during the day.
We did have our coffee.
We did.
From our brand new coffee maker.
That's true.
That we purchased.
In our house. That we purchased.
Also that.
As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at popcornpoops, or personally, I'm at jcasperkramer.
And I'm at Dusty Cram Cram.
You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, or follow our Twitch channel, Pixel Poops, at twitch.tv/thepixelpoops, which we hope to be doing something with soon, or
changing it to just YouTube full time. That's still a conversation that we have to have.
If you want to support the show, you can also shop on our website and get yourself some handbags and t-shirts and buttons, things like that. You can donate to us at our donut button. That's on our website. Big pink donut. Can't miss it. You can also sign up at audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for a 30-day trial where you will receive a free audiobook to keep for forever. Forevs. Yep. But the best way to support the show, as always, is to leave us a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever else you find our podcast. Dustin, do you have a review to read on the show today? Unfortunately, I do not. But if you would like to leave us a rating and review, remember, we will read it on the show. So head over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave us that rating and review. We really like 5-star reviews, but we also like honesty. So do what your heart tells you to do. Follow your heart, really. Follow your heart. That's the thing that you really should do. I think that Michelangelo said it best in his song from the Coming Out of Their Shells tour, follow your heart. So I want you to do that. And leave us a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher, and we will read it on the show. This week, we are kicking off hashtag 80s Fantasy Month with Richard Donner's 1985 film, Ladyhawke. So, sinkers, let's go ahead and start things up. Press play at the beep after the countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And we're off. Look at these superimposed clouds over this rising sun. I really like this. I do like this opening. This title sequence here, where it's kind of I guess Terminator-esque. You remember the Terminator title sequence? Maybe where it's got like, it's basically this. It doesn't have like a background or anything, but it's like, super zoomed in the letters of the Terminator kind of scrolling across as the credits for the movie appear. Well, and of course, what we're doing here is we're showing the sun and the moon, because in the movie, the sun and the moon play a huge role going back and forth with the two characters. Theming. That's called theming. Mm-hmm. Yes, and then this movie does a pretty good job, I think, with at least that aspect of. Well, I've got a lot to say about it, so I'll be talking about it. I have a little bit to say about it, but yeah, I think it's a little one-sided. Mm-hmm. We'll get into that. I'm also just going to talk about the history of like the moon being feminine and the sun being masculine. Oh, nice. And all of that. So
That'll be interesting. These don't look like clouds, though. If you look closely,
it like
it's very obviously smoke that they've probably just filmed in front of a green screen
or fog machine,
or a fog machine, and just kind of superimposed over maybe stock footage of, I don't know, probably not stock footage. I'm sure that cinematographer Vittorio Storaro shot this himself. A very accomplished DP. Actually, he's actually shot some really, really beautiful films. He's, of course, an Italian cinematographer who shot things like Last Tango in Paris from 1972, also Apocalypse Now from 79, The Last Emperor from 87, and then Dick Tracy from 1990, which was an early, I don't know if you can call it comic book movie, comic strip movie, I guess. Does that count?
Sure.
There he is. Vittorio Storaro. But yeah, we can hear if you're listening, if you're actually watching the movie and listening to the soundtrack that we're hearing. This is probably one of my biggest criticisms of this movie.
Right.
This kind of came out. Actually, this came out the same year as Legend, as Ridley Scott's Legend, which has a kind of a poppy rock soundtrack by Tangerine Dream. So that was kind of a thing, like anachronistic, if you can call it that, anachronistic musical scores in fantasy movies, I think was kind of a trend. And the rock soundtrack in this movie is probably the worst single thing about this movie.
Right.
I think it's super distracting.
Oh no, I think it's awful. And that's kind of the consensus with this movie too, is people bash on the soundtrack a lot.
I'm sure somebody loves the soundtrack to this movie, but
I'm trying to find, I have some notes on it, on choices that they made and stuff, but I'm looking for it and I can't find it. Anyways,
we're getting introduced to a couple of characters here. We're seeing Matthew Broderick's The Mouse, or what's his name? Philippe Gaston, escaping the Aquila prisons. And we're also getting introduced to the Captain of the Guard here, and we've seen the Bishop already, who's kind of these two are kind of our villains, definitely our villains of the movie.
Anyways, with the soundtrack, though, I still can't find the thing I was looking for. But with the soundtrack, I mean, integrating electric guitars and stuff. Okay, like what was that? Why do I always A Knight's Tale, right? Like where?
Oh yeah.
You know, like you're using popular music or something.
And thinking about that, that's a great point. But I think that A Knight's Tale specifically, I don't know. It feels like A Knight's Tale was probably calling back to movies like this.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it was doing it pointedly and kind of making a point of having anachronistic music in a period piece for style, you know?
Right. And that's why I'm trying to say is that I think you can have electric guitars and stuff in a fantasy movie, in a medieval fantasy movie, and it fit. Like there is a place for it and it works in a certain way. Like, but it's got to be integrated into the themes and into like, it has to feel very intentional. Like A Knight's Tale. Right.
Like in A Knight's Tale.
Yes.
Like, I feel like it's been years since I've seen that movie, but I feel like there's a moment in that movie where Chaucer, played by, Paul Bettany, is like reciting like modern lyrics.
Well, it's very,
or something.
The movie is very
like Led Zeppelin
self-aware.
lyrics or something.
Like the movie is super self-aware of itself and its audience and what it's trying to do. Not to like, I don't recall thinking that A Knight's Tale was really good. So, I mean, it's been many years since I've seen it. So.
I remember it being fun.
Yeah, I remember it being fun too. But anyways, I don't want to say an opinion on it because I was a kid when I saw it last. But my point is though, is that I think there's absolutely a place for it when it's done intentionally and thematically and it's part of what you're trying to do.
Right.
But this movie, it just feels like it was a mistake. It feels like
an honest mistake where they earnestly scored.
They thought it was
going
to be cool.
Right. Like they thought like the anachronism or the contrast of the music to the setting wasn't a choice that they made for style. Like it wasn't the contrast that was adding to the style. It was just they honestly thought it complemented, I guess, the film. And it's a shame. The guy who composed the music for this movie, Andrew Powell, he hasn't really worked on a lot of movies. If you go to IMDb and look at his body of work, there's nothing that stands out. He's only got a few things on there anyway. And he's got a Wikipedia page, and it appears that he's worked with, the Philharmonic Orchestra and the Symphony Orchestra in London. And he's done a lot of behind the scenes. He's more of a behind the scenes kind of musician. He's worked on other people's albums, and he has had like spats of like solo performing in London, but he's not really a personality as far as like a solo personality as a musician, like a lot of film composers kind of are. Like you've got your Hans Zimmers, and your John Williamses.
I just found the note that I was looking for too. So the thing that people say when they try to defend this movie's music is that there is some evidence of like intentionally researched period music for this movie that exists in it. The dance that they, when Mouse and Ladyhawke dance in the barn, when they dance, that song is a genuine Italian 14th century dance song.
Right.
Named
Okay. I did see that.
Trotto or something. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. Trotto. And there's also a genuine Renaissance piece in here by John Dowland, says the internet. So, like, I'm sure what we're listening to right now, right, sounds period.
Yeah.
And there are instances in this movie of period music. And I also will say that the melody itself, like the heroic melody that, when they're riding into the sunset and whatever, I actually don't dislike the melody itself. I think that just, coming off of everything with the trumpets and the electric guitar.
Totally. And like, to be totally fair, to criticize the rock music in this movie as anachronistic is not entirely fair, because the moments in this movie that do have, and I do feel like the not contemporary, but I guess traditional music score or conventional orchestrated musical score in this movie is beautiful when it happens. Like it is a really nice score, but I feel like, to be fair, that is as anachronistic as rock music, because that type of like orchestrated music didn't come about until long after the Middle Ages. That's like Baroque and Romantic period type stuff.
But I think what people who defend the music in here, and they're like, there's some real stuff that's like actually from that time period. I don't care that it's anachronistic. That's not my problem. My problem is that when I watch a fantasy movie, I want to hear fantasy music. I want to hear
your idea of what fantasy
my
music
idea
is,
of fantasy music, sweeping scores, and there are certain instruments.
We would call them conventions, I think. Like we've established conventions as anachronistic as they are in truth. You're talking about like, the type of stuff that Tchaikovsky wrote was like 500 years after this period that they're showing. So, it's...
when I hear like synthesized drums and stuff in a movie like this, I start picturing synthesized drums. And then I'm just like, and it takes away from the fantasy for me. Sure. It takes away from
I didn't actually research any of those dates or anything. I'm just assuming it's like 400 or 500 years after.
I did do some research.
Did you? Okay, yeah. I didn't expect to talk about the music.
It's just about, they don't say, it's just supposed to be medieval Europe. That's all you're supposed to get out of this. Like they didn't
medieval
set
Europe,
it specifically.
Technically, what is medieval Europe? That's like 400 AD to like 1100
hold
AD
on,
or something like that.
There are better dates I can give you here because of references they make. Okay, so they talk about her father, who was a baron, dying while killing Saracens in Antioch. Mm-hmm. So originally Saracens, well, I'll do all this research. I'll talk about it later when we get there. But so we're talking about the Crusades, and that would be during the Antioch, the siege of Antioch happened in 1097 to 98 during the First Crusade.
Okay.
So that's about where you can guess.
So we're talking about this is like early 11th century,
right?
Is what we're talking, because this is right after the Crusades.
Probably, if her father died in Antioch. Right.
Yeah, then... the people in this movie talk about the Crusades as though like people that were close family members fought in them. So this is late 11th century, I guess, or early 12th century, probably, right?
Right.
Okay.
If we are to believe that when he says Antioch and killing Saracens in Antioch, then we're to believe that would be. I mean, the most famous thing with Antioch in the Crusades was the Siege of Antioch, which was during the First Crusade, which was 1097-98. So
there's an Antioch in Tennessee, and
the siege was
my entire life. Every time someone has referred to the Crusades or, the period of the King Arthur legends refer to Antioch as well. And don't they?
I don't
feel
know.
Like they do.
Probably.
I think the King Arthur legends also refer to Antioch as a place. And my whole life, every time I've heard of Antioch, I'm like, you mean like Antioch, Tennessee?
When I think of the Crusades, I think of like Robin Hood and stuff. That's
okay. Yeah. So yeah, we've seen Mouse escape. Philippe Gaston, played by Matthew Broderick, escape the prisons of Aquila. Did you do any research on Aquila and anything like that? I guess we can talk about that.
So Aquila, the movie was shot in Italy, and L'Aquila, I'm sure I'm
L'Aquila.
I'm still saying it wrong. Is a real place in Italy, and it means the eagle.
Okay.
And they did filming near there when they got the shots of that ruined castle up in the mountains. You know what I'm talking about? And which is likely the highest castle in Italy, if not Europe. But anyways, I didn't get a sense that this was supposed to be in Italy specifically, just medieval Europe. So I'm not sure that this is supposed to be the Aquila that is L'Aquila.
Okay.
But they did film in a place in Italy that has a very, very similar name.
So Matthew Broderick is about to make a really stupid decision. He has just escaped the prisons, and he's traveled across the country a little ways, as far as he knows, escaped like the guards that have been chasing him. And the first thing he does is, at the first town he comes to, is make a toast to his escape
from the prisons.
Yeah. And of course there are guards there, and they're just like, "Yeah, you're dumb. Why did you do that?"
Right. So let's talk about this character a little bit. His name is Philippe Gaston.
Yes.
Is that right? But I refer to him as the Mouse because that's what he calls himself throughout the movie, which is supposed to be presumably because he is small and can get out of tight situations, like physically and, metaphorically. He's a thief. He was in the dungeons because of stealing something, we're led to believe,
I guess.
And so going back, I just want to go through my notes, some of the things we missed. When he escapes from the sewers, he compares the escape to his escape from his mother's womb.
That's interesting because the first thing I thought with like seeing his hand digging through the mud was, is this like a symbolic rebirth? Sequence for this character, and then he comes out and makes that comparison to escaping his mother's womb, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so the subtext becomes text. All right.
But I mean, it's his birth into the story, we could say.
Sure.
We could get a little theory here and start talking about the trauma of birth.
We had
an auto rank.
The little girl who saw him in the church under the grates, and just reminded me when I was a kid of trying to talk to the Ninja Turtles through sewer grates.
What?
When I was little, and you'd walk through a parking lot at like Walmart or Target or somewhere, and they have like the big grates, the drain grates in the ground. I'd walk over them and yell down them and try to talk to the Ninja Turtles.
I'm over here talking about psychoanalysis and stuff, and you're talking about Ninja Turtles.
All right. Okay, then.
Birth is the most traumatic thing that happens to us, right? Being ripped from the bliss of life in the uterus causes us to spend our whole lives
ripped.
Right. From the bliss. Oh, right. Trump.
Okay,
rhetoric.
Donald Trump.
Sorry.
Nice rhetoric.
But it's also the rhetoric from the theory from.
Sure.
So we spend our whole lives trying to recover from that trauma of being taken from the uterus. And also homosexuality is just abhorrence of the female genitals because the trauma was so terrible for that particular person.
What?
Freud went back and forth praising this theory and then shitting on it throughout his entire career.
Freud was a hack.
Yeah, well, this wasn't Freud's. This was another guy who I think dedicated the book to Freud.
I mean, you mentioned Freud. That sounds like a Freudian theory right there.
Well, but sometimes he was like, yeah, and then sometimes he was like, no, scholars say it contradicts like everything he believed in.
These swords look like they're made of tinfoil.
Are there crocodiles in Italy? I didn't do that research. I think no.
I don't know, but when he's
gators,
I don't know. When he's in the sewers, he sees that bull skull floating down, and he says something about like, if that's not what I think it is, then I'll
right. And I was like, what the hell do you think it is?
Yeah, I didn't know what he thought it was. Anyway,
because I'm pretty sure. I mean, are there? I didn't.
There's a pretty great line from the bishop, though. I don't remember what the setup exactly is for it, but it's something about the captain of the guard said that it would be a miracle to like get him back, or it would have been a miracle for him to escape the prisons or something like that. And the bishop is like, I believe in miracles. It's part of my job.
Yeah. But other things, though, the sewers would be super nasty. Medieval sewers.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, you would have so many diseases by the time you were out of there.
Oh, for sure. Like that's a death sentence in and of itself. But the resources that they expend trying to get back this one little thief, and the reasoning that that the bishop puts behind it is really, it's stretching it, I think. The bishop assumes that one escaped prisoner, this one guy, could start a rebellion simply because he escaped. If people hear that one person escaped the prison, the Aquila prison, then that would show a sign of weakness, and then a possible rebellion would start. So I don't know. That seems particularly paranoid, even as far as theocratic monarchies go, which in and of itself is a pretty paranoid,
profession.
Structure, system, I guess.
I don't know. It's really weird. It's weird that their logic is like, they have to go after this thief because all hell could break loose if people find out that he escaped. Well, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Why? What?
Think about how, like, just in this first encounter, because of course Rutger Hauer's character shows up. What's his name? Navar. Mm-hmm. Rutger Hauer's character Navar shows up, and there's obviously some kind of history between him and the guard and the captain of the guard. And they've already lost like a couple of guys.
Yeah.
Like a couple of dudes are already dead trying to get this one little thief back, who's actually not important. Like, he's really not. It's just the idea that he escaped that the bishop is afraid could start a rebellion, which is the craziest, most paranoid shit I've ever heard.
Other things that have happened so far. Man, these guards are incompetent. Like, I know that it's a trope in a lot of genre films and books and games and everything else, that it's like you've got unimportant minions or whatever you want to call them that are just fodder to be destroyed by the hero, that just fall super easy. But God, these guys are so incompetent. They like fall off their horse when the fucking hawk flies by. They can't catch him because he's jumping around.
That whole scene was the whole fight scene in the town was pretty weak sauce as it was.
Can't hit a guy with a crossbow who's like 2 feet away from you.
Well, they weren't asked to bring back Philippe alive. They just said, get him. They could kill him, and he's hopping around and jumping and climbing all over shit, and it takes them forever just to draw their swords. They're just like
waiting for him.
Right.
And then the one dude literally falls on his sword and dies. That happens twice in this movie, where someone falls onto a sword and dies.
And I don't feel like I'm being too hard on this when I say that the action scenes are nearly farcical, and the music doesn't help that either. And if you're familiar with, this was directed by Richard Donner, who also directed Superman and at least part of Superman 2. That's a whole story in and of itself. The Goonies and Lethal Weapon. I feel like Lethal Weapon is like the first time he really kind of perfected what would be his style of action. But if you're familiar with his Superman movies, I don't think that should come as a surprise that his action is really awkwardly blocked. Like the movement and the placement of characters is just not. I don't know. You're talking about the same guy who directed like ostensibly the fight scenes between Superman and General Zod, which are pretty fucking stiff.
Yeah. I love the old lady at this farm here. I love like the smirky look that she has and the way she kind of hides behind her husband, like the expression that she wears and the way she walks. I don't know. There's something super cute about her.
Yeah, and the other thing, and I'm glad that the movie is at least smart enough to put my concerns in the character's mouth. It does this a couple of times. But my question right off the bat when Navar showed up to save Mouse is, why does Navar give a shit about Mouse? Mm-hmm. And then Mouse, or Philippe, actually asks that of himself and says, why does he care about me? Why did he save me? So they at least put that concern of the audience into Matthew Broderick's mouth. And I think that's a good thing, especially because he is the input for the audience. Like he represents the audience. He is us, because we're kind of separated. We are kind of the third wheel to this great tragic romance between Navar and Isabeau, who is the titular LADYHAWKE.
Oh, one thing I hate that this movie does, there are clearly multiple things I hate that this movie does, which is so unfortunate because I love this movie, or I thought I did, but now I've gone back and watching it with a critical eye, I'm kind of...
I mean, it's okay. It's okay.
And we need to talk about like why we picked this movie, but one of the things I hate is they have adult women dub all the voices of the little girls in this film, and I don't get it. It sounds so weird.
They're all like background characters.
Mommy, good, mommy. Like it's
just like that.
It's so awful. God, why can't you take the 5 minutes it takes to get someone who has a daughter on your set to like say a line into a microphone, right? Like, I just don't get it.
The thing that one of the things that really defines Philippe Gaston is that he's constantly talking to himself, which he also passes off as like talking to God, like he's always talking to God. He's a religious character. He's a character that has a lot of faith. And it's kind of amazing that Matthew Broderick is able to pull off that constantly talking to himself bit and manages to make it endearing and not irritating.
Yeah.
And then knowing that he went on to star in Ferris Bueller's Day Off the very next year effectively makes this kind of his audition tape for that. You know, I'm sure that he was probably working on this concurrently, or probably right after he got off of this, he started working on Ferris Bueller with John Hughes. But that entire movie is him talking to the camera, talking to himself, talking to the audience, and making that work. And that's not easy. Like, you have to have a certain kind of charisma to make that work. And I think that, if Ferris Bueller can be described as anything, I think that the movie very much drives home the point that he is charismatic. That's how he gets by in life, is by being charismatic.
Are the farmers trying to kill them right there? Is that what this is? Is that he comes back and the farmer is trying to kill him?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's weird to me, but okay. I mean, I guess everybody's evil back in the day. So what was I trying to say? I think he does this well. I think he pulls it off.
Matthew totally.
Broderick. Because the thing is I should hate it. Like the ongoing narrative and stuff. I mean, think how much I bitched about in The Dark Crystal, when just the little bit of like outward spoken inner monologue that we have in that movie with the protagonist, and how much I hate it. In here, I should hate it. I should hate him walking around talking to himself.
Yeah.
But it totally works.
Oh yeah, totally.
His character, he just does it well. I think with a different character, it wouldn't work. That's
the charm of Matthew Broderick. And again, like, I think that shows through, especially in a movie like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mean, to be fair, Ferris Bueller is a very, very manipulative character, and maybe even evil. I actually really want to do Ferris Bueller's Day Off, not because I don't like that movie. I do like that movie, but I think that everyone kind of misses the point of that movie, kind of like Fight Club, and The Incredibles.
What do people miss the point of in Fight Club?
people who miss the point of Fight Club see it as a celebration of masculinity.
Oh, weird.
When it is not at all. Like, in fact, it's a criticism of masculinity and kind of a celebration of well, really, it's kind of a celebration of like that hyper homoerotic vibe that comes out of, it's kind of, kind of a turnaround when you go down that road of like hyper masculinity. Eventually you end up in homoerotic territory.
Right.
And that's kind of what
we
the
talked
movie is
about that
exploring.
with the wrestler.
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Where there's definitely a strong sense of homoeroticism out of this idea that, of men like taking off their shirts and getting sweaty and getting close and beating each other up and shit. Yeah. It's like, it's almost a kind of sexual intercourse.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, like the people that I don't know. I feel like if you like the Boondock Saints and Fight Club, you probably misunderstand Fight Club.
Okay, interesting.
But if you don't like the Boondock Saints and you do like Fight Club, then you probably have a better chance of actually understanding what Fight Club is trying to say.
I haven't ever seen the Boondock Saints, but
those are all movies we should probably.
But I've said this before, but I set up during one semester when I was teaching some high school English. I had some non-traditional male students who were like, they were going back to school to get to so that they could go into the army pretty much. They were trying to get their lives together, and I needed literature that I thought that they would enjoy, and so we read Fight Club, and they did. Surprise, surprise, they fucking loved it, and so I developed like a whole course around Fight Club.
But they probably misunderstood it.
I don't know. We talked a lot about it. We were I was very critical in that course. Not critical, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not like critical against the book, but like made them critically think about what was happening in the book. So I think they got it. But anyways, though, back to how the hell did we?
Let's work back. So we were talking about misunderstanding Fight Club, misunderstanding Ferris Bueller. See, Ferris Bueller, okay, that's where it came from. Ferris Bueller, I don't think was made as a movie to create a character that is evil necessarily, but I think that Ferris Bueller as a character kind of goes beyond just charming and charismatic to where he gets what he wants and falls full on into kind of sociopathic manipulator. Which, to bring it back to this movie, Philippe is not that. In fact, Philippe, I think that his nickname, the Mouse, is very apt, not just for his, physical attributes, but also that he's pretty meek.
Right.
Like, he's pretty reserved and kind of nervous.
And looking out for himself, just trying to get food and survive. Yeah. I think it's interesting, obviously intentional, that we have two characters that turn into animals, and then we have a character who doesn't turn into an animal, but whose name is an animal name.
Right.
And also, if you look at like the kind of animals, we've got a hawk and a wolf, very predator kind of animals, and then we have a mouse that's like
prey,
right at the bottom of the fucking food chain.
Well, he's prey. He is prey. In fact, a mouse is prey for birds of prey, like hawks.
Yeah. So there's definitely
and also going back to Aquila being the word for eagle.
Right. Yes, which was preying on him and was going to kill him.
The mouse literally escaped the clutches of the eagle.
Right, and then spends the movie trying to escape from the eagle because the eagle keeps chasing him.
Right.
So yeah, it's totally like there's intentional symbolism and stuff going on here with all of that. Let's talk about a few things. Okay, first, I'm not going to start the whole tirade on this now, but it's the biggest problem with this movie for me, which I never noticed before. But I'm just going to start it off.
We already talked about the music.
No, it's not the music. The biggest problem that I have with this movie, we see the first hint of, the first moment where I raised an eyebrow and was like, that's a little, okay. When Mouse calls Goliath, the horse, a girl, and Navar says, go with him, he didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Okay. Yeah. First moment right there, and I'm just going to leave that for you, and then we're going to come back to it later.
It's 1985.
Just keep it. I don't care that it's 1985.
I know, it is.
I don't care. There's much worse going on in this movie, but that's just the first moment of it. This woman, do you think she's supposed to look like a bird?
I think so. This woman that's dancing for the bishop.
And look how he feeds her. Oh, fucking.
And look at all these birds in the yard. Like, I think they're very obviously setting up. And we're actually going to find out I think it is in this scene that the bishop expresses some kind of affection or concern for
LADYHAWKE.
For LADYHAWKE.
Is a boo.
Is a boo.
Is a boo boo.
Is a boo. Played by Michelle Pfeiffer. We did see our first glimpse of Michelle Pfeiffer. Another one of my earliest crushes, along with the likes of Amy Asbeck. But
who's Amy Asbeck?
She was in, I think the only thing she was in that we've actually watched is House 2. I think she's like the girlfriend of the guy that comes to visit them in the house early on. But Michelle Pfeiffer was an early crush. I mean, we can really thank Batman Returns for that.
Okay, so let's talk about the curse. Okay. So the curse.
They haven't really talked about it in the movie.
Right, but you should have already figured it out if you're watching this movie. You should have already figured out the curse. So the curse is that by day she's a hawk and he's a human, and by night he's a wolf and she's a human. And so they are forever going to stay together and continue traveling together and whatever, but they are forever apart. They can never be together. And Mouse is just a cipher for the audience, right?
Yes.
Which is,
I think he's a little more than a cipher because he does have a personality and a character. Does. But to be fair, yeah,
he's following the story. There's even a moment where
he's the insertion point for the audience. I think
I'm trying to see if I can find it. There's even a moment. I think it's when he gets the story where he's told, you've stumbled onto a tragic story, and whether you like it or not, you're lost in it with the rest of us. Mm-hmm. Clearly speaking to the audience, sure, even though that's Imperious speaking to Mouse. So it's wonderful. Okay. And like, honestly, this is just one of those fantastic, tragic, because all good love stories are tragic. That's just the best. Let me rephrase. The best love stories are tragic.
Sure.
And so it's just one of these tragic romantic stories that is perfect. It's fantastic. It's magical, and it's so desperate, and the longing, and etc. On Tor.com, I stumbled across an article that was even suggesting that this is the best fairy tale ever to be put on screen.
Okay.
And it gave a lot of reasons for why that was so. It was one of their like bloggers that Tor puts out, one of their freelance writers, which I wonder if they pay them.
Do you agree with that?
No, I don't.
I mean, I can think of so many more movies that are better at like being filmed fairy tales. I mean,
off the top of my head, like if we take animation in there at all, then it's nowhere, nothing.
No, nowhere near the time. I mean, but you've got stuff. I mean, like I feel like even Edward Scissorhands is a better film, live action film fairy tale than this.
I don't know. I feel like they were
Tale of Tales. We saw that.
Yeah, and I feel like they were going for like medieval fantasy kind of fairy tale.
Oh, okay.
They were talking about like legend and stuff like that in the mix.
So they're also talking about like setting.
Right.
That's
yes.
important. Okay. Well.
But I still don't think it's true, primarily because of the problems that I have with this movie now after reviewing it. So our history with the film. What is your history with the film?
I had known about this film for years, and I never saw it when I was a kid. I watched this in college. Like, this was one of the movies that when I went through my really heavy gotta catch up on film history phase in college, it was like, okay, Richard Donner is a name, and I need to watch everything that he's ever made. So, and I never got around to watching everything he's ever made, but I watched all the big stuff, and this, was one of them. So I ended up buying the DVD at some point and watching it, and I watched it once in college, and I was like, yeah, cool. I like that, I guess. I don't know. I really didn't have much of an opinion about it. I remembered it being really pretty. I think this is a really well shot movie. But I don't know, like it's watching it now, this movie's really slow. It is really slow. There's a lot of padding in this movie.
Yeah. This should not be 2 hours.
No, this is a 2-hour movie and it's way long.
Yeah. And that's not just because we complain every time a movie's more than an hour and a half long. It's also because it just shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be 2 hours long.
There's just not 2 hours worth of stuff here.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's my history with this. I saw it as an adult in college and had not really an opinion about it. I guess it was just positive, just in general, like, yeah, good movie, cool. And that was it. And I haven't watched it again since, so that should tell you something. I
really think that I saw this at some point as a kid, but I don't remember distinctly seeing it as a kid. I actually didn't come back to it until within the last couple of years. You got a VHS copy of it and I put it on, and I've just kind of watched it without really paying attention to it a few times, like while I was doing other stuff. And I've always, like, since I've watched it over the last couple of years a couple of times, my general feeling of it was very, very positive, where it's just this pretty fairy tale and it's a great tragic romance, and it's got all the tropey elements that I love in a movie like this. That I love it when people push boundaries and do weird things and experiment with their genre fiction and, blend genre and all that kind of stuff. I'm totally into it, but I'm also totally into just tropes.
Sure.
Like,
I mean, you appreciate when a conventional story is just told well.
Right. And honestly, that is, there are like two ways to tell a story well, really. Like, seriously, there are like two ways. And those two ways are going the way that people have already gone before and just doing everything right.
Yeah,
right?
Just doing it right.
So you tell a story that's already been told, but you just tell it right.
I feel like Pixar has built an incredible body of work on that concept. Is just, we're going to tell conventional stories, and we're going to, with interesting premises and interesting settings.
Not everything is the same, but...
Right. But yeah, like not a lot of surprises. Just like, this is how you tell a story the right way, and that's what they do.
And then the other way, of course, is to do weird things and experiment, surprise people, experiment with things, blend genres, do kind of unpredictable stuff that's probably going to alienate some people, but
subvert expectations, deconstruct tropes,
right? Yes,
that kind of stuff,
and still hit the mark, right?
Sure.
So that's what I'm saying, is like, there are two ways to tell a story. This is a story that's told in the first way, where it tells a story we've already heard with characters we may or may not know and different things we may or may not be familiar with. Are we specifically familiar with a curse that turns one person into an animal by day and the other by night? Probably not. Besides this, I'm sure now there's tons of other stuff, but
sure.
But probably at this point, there wasn't a lot out there that was exactly like this. But it's still a tragic story that we've heard a million times. They just tell it well. And so that's what I felt about this movie when I was watching it recently, where I was just like, oh, it's a conventional story that's just told well. But now I've come back to it, and I've seen there are things about it that at the core of this story, they get so wrong that I just have a hard time enjoying it like I used to enjoy it. Sometimes this fucking podcast does that to me, and it pisses me off.
What?
That I have a movie that I really like, and then
and then forcing to look at it under a microscope, you're like, damn it, I don't like this anymore, but because I can't just watch it superficially.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't watch this movie superficially anymore. And the problems that I have
I'm sorry. Did you see that fake ass bird that they just shot with that crossbow bolt? Oh, sorry.
The problems that I have with this movie are strong enough now. They're serious enough for me now that I don't think I'll ever be able to enjoy this the way I enjoyed it before.
Well, you enjoyed it before as something that you would fall asleep to and kind of enjoy the pretty pictures and the sometimes pretty noises and then
and the idea of fantasy and romance.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Simple, superficial storytelling that is kind of, it doesn't amount to much at the end of the day. This is not the kind of movie that I watch and it stays with me. It's like, okay, that's a thing that I watched, I guess. but it's not like it's incompetently made or anything. I don't know. It's fine.
They never go back and deal with the fact that this is all Mouse's fault. That this whole
no, that's
thing,
true.
They never talk about that.
Because he ran away.
Yeah, because he ran away, this is all his fault.
Well, Rutger Hauer's character, Navar, decided, we kind of finally came out and the story revealed why he cares about Mouse, or why he wanted Mouse to be, part of his party. And we will get kind of like a party forming later, which I feel is like an important part of any fantasy movie.
Right.
But yeah, when he's, heard in the town that, this thief escaped Aquila, he was like, well, this is the sign from God that I've been waiting on. And he's telling Mouse, he's like, I've been asking God for a sign for all this time. I need someone to get me into the city, and you've just escaped the city, so you can get back in, and the city. And there's actually a really great line. This movie does have a couple of really great lines, one of which is the I believe in miracles, it's part of my job. The other one that I really like is when Navar is telling Philippe, I've been waiting for a sign from God, and you are the sign. And Philippe says, I talk to God all the time, and he never mentioned you.
Yeah. I also like the fact that the moment when Navar says that he is going to kill the bishop, like that's his quest, his mission is to go kill the bishop. Mouse is like, okay, see ya, bye. He's like, I'm done with this, because that is the appropriate response.
Yeah, it's like, no, we're not going to do that.
I'm not going to be a part of that death sentence, that suicide mission. A weird moment that was in here when the bishop was talking about a famine. I love
this shot. This shot right here is just one of those kind of unassuming shots, just the sword in the foreground and Navar in the background with the mountains in the far background. It's
nice.
Yeah.
It's classic. Shot. It's classic.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, I stand by that. This is a beautiful movie.
Oh yeah. And the location's incredible.
Oh yeah.
Apparently there's a famine going on and people can't pay taxes because of the famine.
Yes.
I'd like to see that maybe in the movie.
Yeah.
If that's part of the reason for the bishop to act the way that he does and do the things that he does, I'd like to see that a little bit. Like there's none of that. We don't see anything. We're just told that some of this stuff is going and I kind of wonder why they even put it in there. That's a good one too. Yeah. I kind of wonder why they even put it in there. Why they even bothered to write all that backstory in, because already we're just like, oh, whatever, evil bad guy. That's fine. But they try and like give him some backstory with that, and it just feels forced.
We don't really get a bead on, aside from the bishop saying that they're in a famine and that he's trying to tax the poor, even though there's nothing left to tax. We never really get a bead on how society functions like during the famine. We never see the people suffering.
No. And also the bishop being evil, and
it doesn't really affect the story at all.
No,
it has nothing to do with anything.
Well, I feel like they were doing it. They put it in there just to give us some reasoning for why he is an asshole or feels the need to do the things that he does. I don't know. They also, want us to believe that he's evil, but mostly just by telling us he's evil.
Sure. Does he ever actually do anything?
I guess when he hires the wolf hunter.
Well, the first thing that we see him do is execute people.
Right.
So he has people executed. That's the first thing we see him do. So I guess that's shorthand for he's a political leader and has to carry out executions, therefore evil.
I guess I just, I don't know. I feel like there is some surprisingly substantial telling not showing in this.
Yeah. And for a movie that's 2 fucking hours long,
right?
Probably a lot more than needs to be here, for sure.
Some of it I'm just like either just cut it for us and let us rely on the tropes or I don't know, or take the time.
I feel like there's a really, even with what's here, I feel like there's a really, really lean, fun, efficient, fast-paced movie that you could get just out of cutting out a bunch of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like, I feel like I could probably throw this in Adobe Premiere and cut it down to a lean movie that's probably a lot more fun to watch than what we've got here.
You should totally do it. Can you take out all the sexist stuff while you're?
I can try.
While you're in there,
cut down some of the action scenes. Man, that last action scene, we're going to talk about, or we're going to try to talk about it, and then we're going to run out of shit to talk about.
The last one,
but the final action scene inside the church just goes on.
It is just unnecessary
forever,
and so many weird choices are made for no reason. It's just really strange.
So they actually had a titular line in this movie, and that's after Isabeau gets injured as a hawk. Matthew Broderick calls her LADYHAWKE, and I'm wondering if that's supposed to be like derived from or a take on Ladybird, which is of course a ladybug, or Lady Bird Johnson, the first lady of the United States when Lyndon B. Johnson was president.
When LADYHAWKE lets him go. When she unties Mouse or cuts his restraints and lets him go, she says under her breath, "He's gonna kill me." Okay, two things there. One, foreshadowing when he does try to kill her, and two, this movie has real fucking issues. Two is that if she knows that she shouldn't be letting him go, why does she let him go? Like, what does she know?
I don't know how she knows that.
What?
Though.
But I feel like this movie, the rules of this movie are a little bit confused with what the animals know and don't know and are aware of and are not aware of.
Well, we do get. There's a scene coming up here where it's the exposition scene where Matthew Broderick sits down with what's his name? Imperious.
And by the way, just calling it the exposition scene sounds like we're gonna shit on that, and that's not the intention.
No. We'll talk about that.
Exposition in dialogue can be, and this is a good example of a movie where it is necessary and it is fine. But
we will get that. And this is Imperious here, played by the legendary Leo McKern. Totally steals this movie. Entirely steals this movie. This movie picks up as soon as he's on screen, and every time he's on screen, he's just incredibly compelling to watch, and he's funny and delivers a great performance. He's a lot like the old Catman in Logan's Run, played by Peter Ustinov. I feel like I remember us saying the same thing about him back when we did our Logan's Run episode. And, Logan's Run being a movie that neither one of us really cared about at all. I don't think either one of us really liked it, as I remember. But when the old man shows up, that movie becomes infinitely more watchable and interesting. But yeah, so Leo McKern just doing an incredible job as Imperious. He's going to have an exposition scene coming up here where we learn the rules, so to speak. And we don't really need the rules, I don't think. I feel like it is another case of kind of telling what they've already shown and that we've figured out as an audience. Like, I figured it out in the first moment that we saw Michelle Pfeiffer.
Right.
It was like, oh, okay, so she is the hawk and he turns into a wolf at night. So automatically you're just like, they're together forever but eternally apart and all this shit. Yeah, I think that works. This right here kind of confuses me. This scene where he's pulling out the crossbow bolt and we can see the bishop struggling in bed or having a nightmare or something.
And you're wondering, is the bishop tied to them somehow?
Yeah. Is it like a Dragonheart situation?
It's very strange.
Where Sean Connery and what's his name? David Thewlis are tied spiritually or whatever in that movie.
Also, his bedroom opens up to the outside.
Alfred fucking Molina. I always forget that Alfred Molina's in this movie. There he is, being awesome.
Yeah, so I think that's a little confusing, like what their connection to the bishop actually is, and the way the curse is broken at the end too, where it's just like he has to look at them. Like, I don't know. There's just weird stuff like that where I feel like they thought that they got the rules down, but they just sort of like it's fine.
This is the scene right here that where Imperious explains everything to Philippe, and one of the keys to the rules is that they don't remember that they're humans when they're animals. right? But we get the impression, and he never says, anything contrary to this, but we get the impression that they do know that they turn into animals when they're humans.
So it says they have no memory of half human selves.
Right, which you'll say.
They have no memory of their half human selves. So when they're animals, they don't remember that they're humans. And also we're supposed to believe that, whether or not they remember. Okay, when she is a human, and they're with the mouse scene, for instance, does she remember why Navar ties up Mouse? Because she was a hawk when she saw it. No, but then she says he's gonna kill me. So she knows,
but only after he runs away and makes a scene about it. I feel like that's, in that moment she realizes that he was tied up by Navar for a reason, and then she says he's going to kill me. That didn't bother me.
I don't know. I think it's a bit confusing about whether or not they can remember what they know as humans and animals. Well, why do they know to stay together?
That's the thing, and I feel like it's probably instinctual. I think it's just instinctual. I don't know if this was just a matter of practicality, as far as the actual hawk that was trained to be in this movie. But the hawk does have a jess on, which is a falconer's tool that helps them train the animal. I don't know the particulars. I didn't do a lot of research on falconing.
Yeah, but I know the particulars of the imagery where we are tying a woman to her master man.
Ooh, shit. I didn't think about that.
That's
interesting. But the wolf, to be fair, the wolf stays with her too.
Yeah, he's not tied to her.
No.
At the end of the movie, she takes the jess and drops it down in front of the bishop as though she's like, I'm free of my chains. But I'm like, that your man had on you, not the bishop. The bishop didn't tie you to his arm.
No. We do learn in this scene, in the exposition scene here, that the bishop made a deal with the devil in order to curse them to be, together forever, eternally apart, transforming into animals by day and night and all that shit. Because the bishop was actually in love with Isabeau. And then when Isabeau and Navar, who was the former, captain of the guard of the city of Aquila, they started having a relationship, and the bishop was jealous. So that's why he made a deal with the devil.
Okay, so good lines and bad lines. Good lines, when Imperius sees Mouse for the first time with the bird, and he's like, good shot, bring her in, we'll dine on her together. And he's like, oh, we can't eat this bird. And he goes, oh God, is it Lent again already? It's good. It's good. Really I appreciate it. Bad lines. Are you flesh or are you spirit? And she responds with, I am sorrow.
Are you flesh or are you spirit? I am sorrow.
Not quite that performance, but
not quite
yes,
that performance, but it's the same feeling.
It's unfortunate.
So we were going to talk a little bit about why the exposition scene works. I feel like this is on some level a necessary evil for this kind of movie, but at least they got a great actor to do the dirty work.
Right.
Leo McKern takes this and he makes it work. I don't care that I'm listening to exposition because he does a good job delivering it.
I am also fine with storytelling happening in a movie that, is really story heavy in that sense, right? That's taken from fairy tales and folk tales and legends, right? And so we have some storytelling that actually happens in the movie. Totally cool. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the story that they say. They talk about Saracens, which, if you don't know, originally that was a word used for people who lived in the desert near the Roman province of Arabia. And then in early medieval times, it became associated with Arab tribes. And then by the 12th century was synonymous with Muslim. Okay. So the first of the Crusades, which were religious wars sanctioned by the Latin Church, began in the 11th century and lasted through the 16th. Jesus Christ.
Whoa.
Right? When you think about the Crusades, I never think of it as being that long term, but that's fucking crazy.
Can
you imagine?
That is many years of atrocities.
Wars that think about, our big wars lasting a decade or something,
Yeah.
or even a few decades, like the ones that have kind of just lingered, like
non physical war, like the
right.
Cold War and shit like that. Yeah.
But like even our big wars, right, were just really over the span of a few years, like World War II and stuff. Wars that last hundreds of years.
Yeah.
That's crazy shit. Anyways, Antioch in the First Crusade, in 1097 to 98, Antioch was a strategic location, and this matters because her father died killing apparently Muslims in Antioch while he was clearly on the crusade. Antioch was a strategic location on the Crusaders' way to Palestine. And there was the famous siege of Antioch, where Crusaders they sieged the city and they started to die from starvation. And inside the city, they had been smart and stockpiled food. But then what am I mixed up my notes here. The Crusaders started to die from starvation, but then they captured Antioch. And then there was a siege of the Crusaders who took over Antioch.
Oh, shit.
And that lasted like a month, and then the Crusaders came out and killed all the people who were sieging them that they had just sieged, and then they won. So it's possible
there's a lot of sieging
that Isabeau's father died from starvation during a siege, like while he was sieging a city.
Okay. So in this, actually, I want to talk about. Let's talk about Michelle Pfeiffer's hair.
Okay.
I feel like her hair is on point.
It is on point.
It's totally on point. Like even for today, like I feel like this haircut would totally work today.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I like it.
I mean, it's a little 80s, but like in a good way, if that makes sense. Like not a lot of 80s hair was great.
Right.
In fact, we remember it fondly probably because it was bad.
Right, yeah.
Because it's quaint. But I like her hair. Totally anachronistic, but I mean, who cares?
Right. Let's talk about Michelle Pfeiffer's character now.
Go for it.
So the biggest problem with this movie, I've been saying it but not saying it, is obviously the sexism in the movie.
Sure.
Her great skill, we were just explained the story of Isabeau and the romance and everything. And we have learned that her great skill that makes her important in this story is that she's beautiful.
That's it.
There you go.
That's it.
That's all of it.
Nothing she's had to work toward. Nothing that makes her strong. Nothing that shows how strong she is.
She fell in love with the captain of the guard, and they were both betrayed because they shared the same confessor, which is this guy Imperius. I don't think I would have told anybody about that shit, by the way.
Right.
Whatever. But so they fled, and the bishop followed, and then he does the curse.
We did just learn that he was the one who kind of betrayed them because he told.
Right. He was the confessor that they told.
Right. They both told Imperius, who was I guess a priest.
I'm not sure how Mouse knew that, but I guess he just surmised it.
He did, and I feel like, and that's
fine.
In my notes here, I say that there was no better way to tell Imperius was the priest who betrayed Navar and Isabeau than have Philippe say it outright. I mean, obviously that's sarcasm. There's obviously a better way to do that, but it's like he tells him the story of Philippe and Isabeau. I love how he's booby trapped his little castle fortress here, like fucking Kevin McAllister or some shit. But yeah, I mean, obviously there was a better way to do that, but it's like just the very next scene, like the next morning after he tells Philippe the story of, how they both confessed their love to this priest, this mysterious priest who then told the bishop, and then the bishop, of course, made the deal with the devil to curse them. And the very next day, Philippe is like, "You were the priest that betrayed them, weren't you?" And he's just like, "Oop, yep, that was me. Oops." And that's it. Like, what? Is there not a better way to get that across?
No, I get what you're saying. Probably there is, but what is that? What is that Vulcan like?
I don't know.
chop that he does.
Well, I mean, this is another action scene that's just kind of underwhelming and awkward. And
he just magically makes Imperius faint. I don't know. Anyways, though, so
some of this stuff looks like it was lit by natural light too. Like some of this outdoor stuff. Mm-hmm. I feel like this was probably all lit with natural light because this is an actual location. You said, right?
Yeah.
This castle is an actual castle that's in...
I don't know how much of, interior shots and all that is actual castle or not. But at least the outside, like the castle itself is...
It's interesting. I mean, I feel like a lot of the exterior stuff looks like it's lit naturally because it's so flat. Like the image is so flat. There's not a lot of really great shadows to kind of separate layers of the image. Which is good if you're going for that kind of look. I guess that's good. I think last week we talked about The Witch, and The Witch, even though it was lit mostly with natural light, it manages to still have a kind of like a nice depth to the image, but there is a flatness to the image that I think that is also intentional. But yeah. So, this scene right here is still going.
Yeah, and of course she's about to fall and just magically just in time turn into a hawk.
Because that's drama.
Which is fine. But anyways, I want to go back to just talking about the fact that, we learned that everyone is in love with her. I do like her scream turning into the hawk scream.
Yeah, that's a nice touch.
That's cool.
Although the transformation itself is a little like, we didn't know how else to do this, so lots of dissolves, and now she's a hawk.
Images that you can't really see what's happening. Anyways, it's probably better than the Animorphs transformations.
Thankfully, oh Jesus! Thankfully, who was the hawk in Animorphs? Tobias.
Oh, Tobias!
Was that his name?
Oh no! Talk about tragic. Doomed to be a hawk forever. I don't remember how that ended. I don't remember if he actually ever got turned back into it. I feel like he died as a bird. Poor Tobias.
This
he
face.
Was the cute one too.
The statue, the face, the decorative face statue thing that's next to Matthew Broderick has a face like, oh my God, you just shot that guy.
Oh my God.
I saw you just shoot that guy. What?
Yeah, look at that.
What?
That's good right there.
I hope you're watching along with us if you're listening to this. I hope you're watching along. What? That was crazy.
But so, anyways, though, so the whole story where we learn all about, how everybody, when she went to Aquila, she was just Aquila. She was just, she was just so beautiful, and everybody fell in love with her. Everybody, the captain of the guard fell in love with her, and the bishop fell in love with her.
Can we talk about how good Rutger Hauer looks on that horse?
He does look really good.
He looks like a badass.
He does.
And he rides it really well.
Mm-hmm. He rides that horse well.
Mm-hmm.
But so, then we learned that it's just like, that's her whole thing, is she's beautiful. That's what got her into this mess. And
well, there's also like this lingering thing. And I feel like they show her kind of moving forward with the wolf during the day. Or not during the day, but at night. But they don't really make a point of her like advancing their quest at all. Mm-hmm. Which to me doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like I feel like, during the day he rides on horseback and carries the hawk, and they move forward toward their destination. And then at night when she transforms and he transforms into wolf, she hops on the horse and they keep going. And they're always together, but they're always moving forward. But there's this distinct sense that I get that at night when she transforms into a lady and he transforms into a wolf, they just kind of hang out. Like right. She doesn't do anything.
She just stays in the same area.
She just stays in the same area. Like we see her dicking around in the woods and like trying to catch a rabbit and fucking, this, that, and whatever. Like not being proactive.
Right.
Like
and so,
Navar is during the day.
So I guess you can say everybody, right? And then think about it. Like, so her time is nighttime, so she has to sleep. right? Like, because she's awake as a hawk. So when she's a human, it's the time when she should just be sleeping.
Sure.
Right? Like, that's, I mean, they kind of set it up this way where it's like that, where she doesn't have any way to do anything. And okay, so ostensibly, if they have equal time, it should feel like both of them are equally contributing
to their mission.
Whatever
that may be.
And they should have the same mission. I don't think she even knows that he's going to kill the bishop.
Oh, this is where he names her LADYHAWKE. Sorry. Yep. Anyway. I don't think she even knows that he's going to kill the bishop. I don't get the sense that she even knows that they're on a mission. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I think that he just does his mission, and then at night she just, like you said, hangs out. And that makes this movie very much feel like Navar is more of a protagonist than she is in the movie.
Even though the movie's titled LADYHAWKE.
And even though they should, like I said, have equal time.
Like it's about her, but somehow she's relegated to almost like a MacGuffin.
Symbolically, this movie wants us to see them as equals. Symbolically, it wants us to. The night and day, the moon thing, even the fact that when she gets pierced by an arrow, he gets pierced in exactly the same spot by an arrow.
Right.
Right. Like, we're supposed to see them symbolically as equals who are both in love with each other equally and who are trying to save each other equally, but it's not like that. This is very Gandalf of Imperius right here.
Totally. And and if you'll notice, they have formed the questing party, which is almost a necessary trope in fantasy movies. Mm-hmm. So we've got a fighter, and we've got the thief, and then we've got a healer. Mm-hmm. And
right. And what is LADYHAWKE?
And whatever LADYHAWKE is. And
the beautiful one.
And that's another thing. It's just like, okay, so they're questing with the damsel in distress.
Right.
Like, she's with them, but she is the one who has to... But
she's still the damsel in distress.
But she's the one who has to be saved. Or you get the sense that she's the one that has to be saved because she doesn't have a purpose outside of being a hawk.
Right.
And then a lady by night.
And when she's a hawk, sometimes she's useful. Sometimes she, like, flies at the bad guys and they fall off their horse.
She's a animal familiar.
Right? It's just very unfortunate is what it is.
It's not equal. It's not fair. It's not as fair as the movie would pretends that it is, I guess.
Should we talk about the sun and the moon stuff? Is this a time for that?
Yeah, I do want to talk about, since Matthew Broderick's kind of talking right now. I seem to remember Matthew Broderick trying on an English accent at the beginning of this movie, and I guess he's just done with that now. Because at the beginning of the movie, he clearly has an English accent, and now he doesn't at all. Or he was at least trying one.
I guess I didn't notice it at as much as you did at first. I didn't notice it, but whatever. Okay, so the sun and the moon stuff. So woman is the moon, right? And man is the sun.
Okay.
And this movie tells us that because Navar is a man by day and she's a woman by night.
Sure.
But actually, let's go way back in the day.
Are you butt actualing me?
Oh yeah.
I didn't even say anything.
I'm so actually.
You were butt actualing yourself. But actually.
Well, actually.
Actually.
Way back in the day, Sanskrit related languages like Latin, Greek, French, etc. This imagery was swapped. Originally, the imagery was the opposite. Mm-hmm. In ancient Sumerian and Arabic, the word for sun was feminine. Moon was masculine. And there were sun goddesses in the oldest religions. But eventually, patriarchy swept in and was like, oh, no, we want that. So they swapped it. And today, we say that woman is the moon and man is the sun. And we make the metaphor fit because we want it to fit. That's why the metaphor fits. Is because we want it to fit. Because originally it wasn't this way. It was the opposite way. Originally, the earliest humans in their symbolic, things in their language and in their religion and all of that, woman was the sun and man was the moon. But now we've swapped it because of patriarchy and we just force it to fit. So one of the things, right, with the moon is the reproductive system, right?
Okay.
So that's why our so women have cycles. Okay. So the big thing with the moon that people
cycles
go
of
to,
the moon.
right, is that like the moon, the woman changes throughout the month.
But I feel like you could say say a similar thing about the life-giving properties of the sun, and comparing that with, a woman's life-giving attributes.
Right. So what we say is that we make it fit. So we talk about the moon's monthly cycle and the menstrual cycle when we talk about women. Mm-hmm. And that's how we make it fit for woman in the moon. And then for man in the sun, we say man is steady and solid and makes things grow. And woman is always changing like the moon. Right. These are the things. This is what the symbolic stuff is that we look at today when we say why man is the sun and woman is the moon.
I feel like there's also like some coded like women are so fickle.
No, there absolutely
stereotypical
is.
Bullshit like embedded in
if
that.
If you get really into it, there's all this stuff about like moon points on a woman's body and stuff, and like what phase of the moon she's in.
Fuck, what?
And how like when it's at her earlobes, then it means that she's going to be more calm or whatever, and when it's at her clitoris, then she's more sexually active or whatever. And that throughout the month, the reason why a woman's mood changes so much throughout the month is because she's in a different cycle of the moon at that moment.
Okay.
Right. So like, yes, absolutely. Oh, and here's the 14th century Italian dance or whatever it is. But so yeah, absolutely. We force the metaphor to fit, and it's a sexist metaphor as it is, but we force it to fit because we've always heard it like that. But I can force it to be opposite if I want to. So we say that man is steady and solid and makes things grow. Women make things grow more than men.
Sure.
Innately, like if you want to talk about it, it's called our reproductive system, and it's why the species continues to exist. So I'm pretty sure that's the biggest metaphor that you can find as to like who makes things grow more. Because with man, they're basically just talking about farming fields and stuff. Either of us can do that. Men can't make a baby in their tummy, right? Like that's just innately. Sure. So okay, so there's one. And then if you want to talk about cycles and how, well, oh gosh, the moon represents, the monthly cycle of a woman's period and all of that. We can talk about solar cycles if we want to make stuff fit.
Yeah.
You want a cycle to fit for women.
Yeah, it's as though the sun doesn't go through its own changes. This is a great moment, by the way.
Oh, yes.
When she comes outside and she sees the wolf pelts on the wolf trapper's horse and she loses it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great moment.
No, I do love that moment right there. That's wonderful.
Although I have to say, like these scenes where Matthew Broderick and Michelle Pfeiffer are together alone and they're talking, despite Broderick's specific charms and the setting to kind of, I don't know, alleviate this kind of indictment, Broderick's milady talk is just this side of a fedora tip. It's a little, I don't know. It makes me recoil just a smidge.
Just this side of a fedora tip. Oh God. Anyway, so like if you want to force the cycle metaphor, then you can force the solar cycle metaphor. Solar cycles take about 11 years, and I can mush it for you. 11 years is pretty close to the average age for a woman to start her period, which is 12 years old. Okay, so I can push that. And then the next cycle, 22 years old, we could push that and say that that's somewhere near the time that worldwide average women have babies. Right? So like we can.
Oh, that's getting.
Yes,
that
and it's getting
higher,
higher and higher and higher. But I think actually now I'm forcing it way too much, and it's probably closer to like 27 or 28. But anyways, the point is that back in the day, it sure as hell was closer, and back in the day, not even that far back in the day, also. But the point is that I can mush these metaphors too, right? Like we can talk about the cycles of a woman along with solar cycles too. It's just whatever you want it to be. So this movie has man as sun and woman as moon, and I'm fine with that. It's fine. I think it's fun to play with both metaphors, but the movie is unfortunately pretty damn sexist, and the fact that it's forcing this, what we now see as a traditional role of male and female, like sun and moon metaphors, I think just adds to that. Although, can you really say that that's the traditional role? Because shouldn't traditionally be the oldest thing, and the oldest thing is that woman is the sun.
I don't know. You're talking about about a medieval fantasy movie with a rock soundtrack. So take that as you will, I guess. So this scene right here where they take on the wolf hunter or the wolf trapper, played by Alfred Molina. Of course, Alfred Molina played Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2, like one of the greatest Spider-Man villains. But little did you know that he could have also played Kraven the Hunter, because that's basically this character also.
Kraven the Hunter?
Yeah, another Spider-Man villain. When is the line, "Go to your master"?
I think it's in the next scene.
Because that's my next
Okay,
note.
so this moment right here, okay? Let's talk about this, because this is when people talk about this movie and they're very positive about it. They talk about what a strong female character she is because of this scene. And only this scene. Hold on,
but what a strong female character she is once in this movie.
Once at one time in this movie.
One time.
And by the way, she doesn't actively do anything in that scene. Oh, well, first, let's say what the scene is.
Oh, well, it's like I said, it's the scene where they're taking on the wolf trapper, who's trying to kill Navar, and he fucking gets his head trapped in a wolf trap, in a fucking bear trap thing, and he dies, and she stands over him as he dies.
So things that she actually does in that scene. Because I think you have to kind of parse that out to really make sense of what's going on. Things she actually does. She sees the wolf pelts and freaks out. Good moment. Love the moment. And immediately gets on Goliath, the horse, and rides off to go ostensibly save Navar.
Right.
That's a thing she does. And yes, it's a good thing. And I like that moment when she rides off to go save Navar. It is played a little bit, though, as, I mean, it's its own trope. Let's be real here. This isn't like some new thing in fantasy where it's like, gosh, this was really, showing a strong female character for her to go save the guy. Because the woman who goes to do something because she's emotional in that moment and sort of gets in over her head, that's very like tropey and also sexist in its own way.
Sure.
Because she rides off into the forest and then she's immediately terrified, right? Yeah. And she's alone in the forest and it's dark and you have a chicken
flies off and she jumps.
And you have Philippe running to save her because she's in the forest and she's like, oh my gosh, and she's seeing the traps everywhere and she's all scared. And then what else does she do? She doesn't do anything. The guy falls. Does she hit him or something to make him fall into the trap?
Something pushes him over. Yeah, something like that.
I don't remember.
She does do something.
Does she push him, or does the wolf come up and
No, the wolf is trapped.
No. The Navar wolf show up because it's not him. It's not Navar.
Oh, right. I don't know.
Maybe it's Navar who comes up and pushes him. I wasn't paying attention in that scene. I don't remember. I paid attention before. Anyways, the point is that he falls into the trap and it's a great moment. I love his head getting smushed by the wolf trap because it's wonderful. What a horrible way to die.
It's pretty gruesome.
Yeah. And she stands there and she's okay with it, which is what everybody cites as how badass she is that she stands there and she's okay with it. I feel like that is not enough for this movie to call her a strong female character.
No, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, she doesn't really actually do anything.
No. Even if she does push him into the trap, which I don't remember if she does or does not do, still doesn't. It's kind of not enough.
I mean, is that kind of a problem with fantasy movies in general, or fantasy stories in general? Is obviously like the damsel in distress. The concept of a damsel is immediately you think of like a woman in a castle tower. Mm-hmm. Like that's in my mind when I hear damsel. That's what I think of, is like the Rapunzel type character set in medieval, Europe type setting. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an issue that we dealt with. We even talked about this back when we did our Princess Bride episode.
Right, yeah.
You've got a movie, you've got this story that is about a woman. The story is titled after a woman, as the most prominent figure or character in the story. Mm-hmm. And then that character or figure doesn't actually have any agency of her own.
Right, yeah.
And doesn't actually do anything to push the story forward. Her existence is what allows other characters to be proactive and have agency and push the story forward. But because the woman as an entity is static, she becomes something, and I said this before, something of a MacGuffin.
Right.
Where it's like you're chasing this concept. You're chasing the idea that you have to get this woman back or save this woman or something. And her role in that is not much more than just being there to act upon.
Well, I mean, it's the whole idea of chivalry in a nutshell, right?
Right.
Like it's a woman that just exists. You're never actually going to have any contact with her. Like she's never actually going to play a part in your story, but you fight honorably and nobly because she exists, and the idea of her is so pleasing.
Because she is.
because she's beautiful.
Yes, exactly. As Asimov once wrote, she is, therefore she needs saving. No, he didn't write that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised because that dude was a sexist, fascist asshole.
I've told the story so many times, but I've read so many articles and stuff about women coming out about him back in the day at conferences, pinching asses and stuff.
Maybe
and,
I don't know. I don't know if he was.
Sick.
Now I said fascist. I think I'm getting him confused. Like I know he was a horrible misogynist, but I think I'm confusing the fascism with Robert Heinlein, who was a total fascist.
In his youth, there are letters and stuff, letters to the editor at some of the big sci-fi magazines where he would write in and talk about how female characters were destroying science fiction, their existence, and etc.
Suck my dick, bro.
Yeah. Anyways, that's a different conversation for a different day.
Oh, totally.
Perhaps might come up though in a later episode.
It could come up in a later episode when we talk about women
because it's related to a bunch of research I did on something else.
Yeah, don't spoil it.
I'm not spoiling. I'm just saying it's a hint.
Oh, I forgot about this little piece of trivia in the scene way before where Navar sends Philippe off to Imperious's castle. One time when they shot that him slapping the horse's ass and sending the horse off, the horse actually just took off over the mountain, and Matthew Broderick couldn't stop it, and they had to wait for the horse to come back on its own. It just disappeared for a few hours.
That's funny.
Anyway, did you have something?
I'm trying to go back to where I was in my mind when we were talking. Oh, so we already missed the scene, but the scene where they were after the storm. They're talking together, Mouse and Navar, and he says, "Go to your master."
Yes, that's right.
He's got, because LADYHAWKE lands on Mouse's arm because I guess they've had a moment together as humans, and she remembers it somehow as a hawk,
even though she's not supposed to. But whatever.
And he keeps trying to get her. It's clear that Navar is being a little jealous, and he's like, what's going on? And they make some jokes about,
what are you fucking my bird? Did you fuck my bird?
The whole conversation is about him taking her to an inn, and what did you do in the barn together, and all of that. It's insinuating that Mouse saw her naked, or they had sex, or something like that.
It's like, oh, she changed clothes. You were with her when she changed clothes? No, I left her to change clothes. You left her alone?
Right, yeah. It's just,
you can't fucking win for losing.
Stupid circle. And in that scene, he keeps saying, "Go to your master." And that's pretty much, this movie. So there you go, right there.
The hawk
in your master.
The hawk in this movie, its name was Spike 2, and it worked in the Universal Bird Show until the year 2000, when she was transferred to the National Audubon Society and became an Audubon ambassador until she died in May 2007. Which means that bird lived was at least,
Birds live a long time.
22 years old, at least 22 years, because this movie, it's an adult hawk in 1985 and died in 2007. So.
I mean, people often talk about, like, if you want a companion for life or something, you get a bird.
Yeah.
I just looked at my notes.
They're not really cuddly, though.
No, but my friends who have birds are like way into birds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
anybody I know who gets a bird, that is like their thing. After they're super serious about it.
I'm fine being a cat lord.
By the way, I just looked back to my notes, and she does kick the dude's head into the trap.
Oh, okay.
But I still like it. It doesn't change it for me. One moment. Can we talk about why they don't communicate?
That's a really great question, because there's this whole idea set up in this movie. It kind of runs. It's almost like an ongoing joke that Philippe passes fake messages back and forth between Navar and Isabeau, because he's trying to smooth things out, or he's trying to, ease their mind about whatever is going on. So, he'll tell Isabeau that Navar said, "Oh, you're the only,
right.
He loves you more than anything, and like he always thinks about you, and this, that, and he wishes for the day when he could see you again, and all this kind of shit." And he does the same kind of shit to Navar, and talks about things that Isabeau, quote unquote, said that she didn't actually say. But here's the thing. Why don't they actually use Philippe to pass messages back and forth,
right,
to get
about
them
what they're doing,
about their goals, about how to move forward? Because this is, we talked about this as a fundamental issue that we have with Isabeau, that at night they don't move. It doesn't seem that they are as proactive about moving forward in their quest as they are during the day when Navar takes the reins, so to speak, figuratively and literally. So I don't understand why, since they have someone around who is talking to both of them as humans by night and by day, why they don't actually talk, send messages and talk.
Can neither of them write? Are we assuming that neither of them are literate? I would figure her place in society would be such that, they didn't teach girls how to write and read very frequently.
No, they didn't.
But still, she's pretty high up in society.
Sure.
I feel like she would learn how to write and read. And I feel like it's very possible that the captain of the guard would learn how to write and read.
Now they've got
too.
Imperius with them too. Like Imperius,
he can definitely write and read.
Definitely write and read. And as Navar was captain of the city guard, I'm sure he can write and read.
That's what I'm saying, is I feel like even before they had Philippe, they should have been able to pass messages back and forth to each other somehow.
Speaking of Rutger Hauer, Richard Donner, the director, originally wanted to cast him as the evil captain of the guard, and then cast a younger actor by the name of Kurt Russell. Yeah. As Navar, but Hauer was not interested in that role and wanted to play Navar. And then when Kurt Russell dropped out of the movie just a few days before they started principal photography on this, Donner was like, "Okay, you can have it, no problem." I feel like Rutger Hauer, despite the fact that they don't really have a lot of scenes together. In fact, this is one of really one of two scenes that Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer technically have together. I think that they do have like kind of a kind of chemistry. I think they look good together.
They do talk about this moment earlier. Imperius talks about it when he's telling a story where he says there's an anguishing moment between sunrise and sunset where they can almost touch but then can't. And this is them showing us that moment, that anguishing moment. And I love the idea. But for one thing, I think they do have time to touch here. If they would just stop screwing around and looking at how shiny their hands are, then they could probably reach out and touch each other.
Yeah, totally. And like many scenes in this movie, this is totally like drawn out.
Yes.
And I know that it's, 85, so special effects are not, and this wasn't a very expensive movie, so, they're not going to spend a whole lot on effects. So your best bet for special effects is basically like dissolves.
Yeah.
And that's what we get. Like we have like I do love that as a human, he still has wolf eyes.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Very kind of Thriller-esque, Michael Jackson's Thriller. But yeah, like you've got some little...
I mean, you definitely have time here to like say something to each other.
Yeah, like you've got these light shining effects, but it's mostly just dissolves. If I was him, I'd be like, touch my dick, just really fast. Just touch my dick is so hard right now. Just touch it once. Touch it once before you have large talons. We're
going to segue into something else because of that in a moment. But first, I want to go back to when the go to your master's scene. Another moment, another thing Philippe says in that moment is she's the most wonderful woman in the world. And the only thing he knows about her is that she's pretty.
Yeah.
That's it. And that other people have told you that they all fell in love with her because she's pretty.
Yep.
That's it. That's so God.
They actually used several different hawks in this movie. I talked about the one that was featured the most, but they had one that would sit on Rutger Hauer's arm and then another one for the flying scenes. And there was a third one. Yeah,
that wolf yell.
Yeah, the wolf yell was a little, I don't know about that. There was a third hawk that they didn't really use all that much because it apparently loved Rutger Hauer. I mean, really loved Rutger Hauer, which I guess would make sense for the movie, right?
That's cute.
But it loved it so much that when it would sit on its arm, it would ruffle up its feathers and it made it look like a big poofy chicken.
Oh, that's cute. I want to see that. That's the one I want to see.
I want to see the poofy hawk that likes Rutger Hauer.
I like that a lot. Super cute.
If I was a hawk sitting on Rutger Hauer's arm, I'd probably poof up my feathers too.
That's cute.
He's a handsome man. We didn't say welcome back. Welcome back, Rutger Hauer. We of course we saw Rutger Hauer in our episode on Blade Runner.
Oh yes,
playing Roy Batty.
So why you talking about the touch my penis thing before the sunset? Where I wanted to segue with that is that I looked for you, Dustin, and yes, there is a the furry wiki page for this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Not surprised.
Yeah.
This must be an early like furry touchstone, I guess, if you will. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Well, he does turn into a wolf, and a wolf is like just one of those.
It's just, yeah.
It's one of those furry faves. Although they're usually not, black or brown or a reasonable color. They're like blue or pink or something.
Oh God.
Anyway.
I really don't want to have that conversation.
Speaking of the wolves, they used 4 Siberian wolves that they imported from California to portray the IMDb, the lupine alter ego persona of Captain Etienne Navar.
It's a little excessive.
Yeah, it's a little wordy.
Do you remember, I forget who it was, but we have a friend who has a dog that's mostly wolf.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's like 70 or 75% more. I think more than what you're legally supposed to have.
Yeah.
And I think the dog's name is Xena Warrior Princess.
That's a good name for that dog.
And it was one of the sweetest dogs I've ever met in my life.
Can we get a wolf dog? That sounds like fun.
We can, but we also have cats, and they are not part mountain lion, so I don't know that that's really fair to them.
True.
We have one cat that thinks it's a mountain lion, but mostly comes off as a dick.
She's a jerk.
Yeah. Not ferocious. We wouldn't really call her ferocious, because when you're that small and that angry, you're just a dick. You're not scary. Warner Brothers falsely marketed this movie as being based on a true medieval legend. And one of the writers, Edward Kamara, took the issue to the Writers Guild Association and was awarded a cash settlement from Warner's. But the claim that it was a medieval legend was not dropped, which is interesting. Let's talk about the writers on this. Can you believe 3 people had their hands on this script? That always blows my mind when I see, especially movies that are just have a really simple, conventional story like this one, and that there were 3 different dudes that wrote this thing.
Oh my God, what did we watch where there were like 10 people on the script? And
I mean, we watched a bunch of things. I feel like the more writers there are on something, the worse it
get.
it typically is. Edward Kamara, we already mentioned him. He was one of the writers. He also wrote the screenplays for Enemy Mine in 1985. That great Dennis. Oh, what's his fucking name? I just lost his last name. Randy Quaid, Dennis Quaid vehicle, and Dragon, the Bruce Lee story from 1993, which, if my memory serves, is a totally underrated biopic. And it's a movie that I would like to revisit, possibly for the podcast.
So why is Navar? I'm sorry. Did you have?
I was talking about the writers.
Okay, go ahead.
So hold that thought. Let me finish talking about the writers because we need to fill as much time.
Go
as
ahead.
possible.
Finish.
Another writer, Michael Thomas, who wrote the 1983 vampire David Bowie, Tony Scott film, The Hunger. And he's actually been working as recently as last year, 2015. He wrote The 33 about the miners that were trapped. And he also wrote a movie back in 2011 called The Devil's Double. Both of those movies, which I feel like I've seen on Netflix a lot. The Devil's Double is the one that's like gold, and it's got a guy sitting, the cover is like a guy sitting on a golden throne, and he's wearing all gold, and the whole cover is just solid gold.
I don't know. That doesn't pop up on my feed, so it's clearly something that you've been watching.
I haven't been watching
No,
that.
not that movie, but like other things. Netflix is, their algorithms are saying you want to watch that movie.
It's possible. Both The Devil's Double and The 33 have pretty good scores on IMDb. Take that as you will. And then the third writer on this was Tom Mankiewicz, who has written several things through the years, but he wrote 3 of the James Bond movies back to back. He wrote Diamonds Are Forever in 71, Live and Let Die in 73, and The Man with the Golden Gun in 74, which I found pretty interesting. But yeah, what were you saying?
Why Navar doesn't believe in trying to stop the curse?
I don't know.
Because the movie doesn't want him to, pretty much.
Yeah, well, they do mention that him getting revenge on the bishop is maybe is kind of a character flaw for him, because even when he hears that it's possible to stop the curse, he doesn't want to believe it, because him killing the bishop, he feels like that's his way to get his jewel in the sword.
Okay.
Because I think that
we don't get enough about the jewel in the sword for that to
we don't.
mean something to me.
Yeah, I don't think that really holds a lot of water, but I think that it's Isabeau that says something about that, where she says something about like, this is not how you get the jewel, or you don't have to get the jewel in your sword this way, or somebody says something along those lines. They mention it, in kind of a side note, and then that's pretty much it. But yeah, the sword he brought up, he said that it was his family sword, and it has several jewels in it for different things that his family members have accomplished, like something that his grandfather did in the Crusades, and then something that an uncle did, and then something that his father did. And then there's one spot in the hilt that's open that doesn't have a jewel, and that's for him. That's for, whatever he accomplishes. How he goes about getting this jewel, I'm not sure. But like I said, somebody, I think it's Isabeau, mentions that his desire is to get the jewel by killing the bishop.
I don't know.
And I think that that's supposed to be like what his personal mission is. And on some level, maybe he would rather get revenge for what has been done to him and Isabeau than
fix it.
He can actually fix it.
Right. Which is, again, part of the problem of this movie.
Yeah, because
that's him. Like, that's fine if it's his character flaw for himself, but we're talking about him doing that and also taking the life of the woman into his own hands and deciding her fate. Right.
Right.
So, which makes him a horrible person.
Yeah.
But this movie doesn't acknowledge that or deal with the fact that he's a horrible person. But anyways, so they also throw away the reason that Mouse is there, because when Mouse is like, no, we've got to try and stop the curse. Like, here's what we can do, whatever. He's like, I'll get into the city without your help. And I'm like, then why'd you need him in the first place? Right. The whole point was for Mouse to get him into the city. And then he literally does not use Mouse getting, I mean, he does, like, he uses him to open the door, but he acts like he doesn't need him. So So there's that.
We did miss the hint, the screenshot hint for this episode, which was a shot of kind of an obscured mouse crawling through the tunnels up to the grate under the cathedral, and it was a nice. Some nice lighting coming through the hole and illuminating the tunnel. And our friends over at cinematicrandomness.com correctly identified this movie from that very obscure screenshot. And I want to congratulate them and point you in their direction. They've got a great website with some cool movie news and trailers and stuff like that. So head on over to cinematicrandomness.com and check them out. Also, we just heard what Rutger Hauer's fucking plan is. And that's he's going to go into the church and try to kill the bishop. And if he can kill the bishop before they ring the bell, then I guess they won't ring the bell. But if they ring the bell, then that means he hasn't killed the bishop. I'm not exactly sure why it works that way. So he's told Imperius that if he hears the bell, to kill Isabeau.
As a bird.
And do it quickly and painlessly or something. Which is like, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. What the fuck with killing Isabeau? Right. How about you assume that Rutger Hauer is probably going to die if he fails at killing the bishop. So why not wait until that night when Isabeau becomes a woman and say,
here's what happened. You can decide for yourself what you want to do now.
Yeah. It's like, how about you decide what you want to do with your life as opposed to having your man decide what you're going to do with your life.
That if he's dead,
he can't be.
I mean, it is very, very unfortunately like, women whose husbands died and then like they had to die too and like be on the same burning pyre and stuff as their husbands, right? Very, very, or slaves who had to die when their masters died, right?
Yeah.
Like it is exactly the same thing. He thinks that he's going to die. That horse needs to calm down. That horse is trying to pretty walk and it needs
look at that horse.
It's very pretty. He's doing a beautiful job, but it's unnecessary. He is overacting in this scene. He needs to tone it down. That was good. He did a good little jumpy there. But anyways, it's the same sort of thing, right? He thinks he's going to die, so she shouldn't live either.
Right.
And that is presumptuous that he thinks that she's not going to want to live without him. Let her decide. Maybe she doesn't, right? Romeo and Juliet, okay? So she wakes up and finds out he's dead and she kills herself. Fine, whatever. But let her decide to do that.
That's her choice.
Don't you kill her preemptively, thinking that because she very well may find you're dead and be like, okay, here's the real thing. I mean, I just didn't know how to break it off with him because I was a hawk half the time and I just really didn't have anything else going for me. But now that he's gone, I've got some ideas. I was thinking about, perhaps opening like a little boutique or something and
open by night, a night only boutique, contributing to the nightlife in Aquila.
Right. Like you don't know what she wants. I mean, very much if he's had you tied to his wrist for like the last few years, then you might be just waiting for him to die anyways.
I do kind of like the subversion of the idea that the white knight is the good guy and the black knight is the bad guy because Navar is dressed in black.
Oh yeah, that's always fun.
And the evil captain of the guard is actually dressed in white, which is interesting. I don't know. Why didn't Navar bring his own sword?
I don't know.
Is it because he was dressed up like... No, because he doesn't dress up like the guards.
I was going to say, did Mouse take it from him?
Well, Mouse definitely just retrieved it out from underneath
where it was hiding, but I don't know if he took it from him intentionally before that. Anyways,
I do like the helmets. I don't know how accurate the helmets are to the time period, but it's a unique design that I don't think I've ever seen in anything before. It's got like this weird like cage-like thing that comes down in front.
It's probably not accurate, and it also like they show us some shots from inside the helmet and my God. But I mean, all armor was like that. How the hell did you see anything?
Yeah.
Or move. Also,
yeah, there's a shot from inside the helmet.
Yeah, there it is. Right? Like, how do you fight with that? Which they did. I mean, probably a lot we talk about how clumsy the fighting and stuff looks in this movie, but that's probably more realistic to what it was actually like.
I guess a lot of people give Doom, the movie, credit for being like a movie, like one of the first movies that does like a first person fighting perspective thing. But this movie totally did it first.
Oh, true.
Because he totally like fought a guy off like in a first person, like behind the helmet thing.
Okay, so other things I wanted to talk about. This movie has a problem with like doing realistic stuff in terms of like their injuries and what consequences would be. And I get frustrated with that because I love fantasy in my fantasy, of course, but I also like to save my suspension of disbelief for things like the magic, right? And the curse and those kind of things. And I like to have my characters that when things happen to them, that we have to seriously react to the things that happen to them. So they've both, within the last like 2 days, had arrow wounds to the chest. Mm-hmm. And we got nothing. We got like one day where it was like, oh my gosh, it's really tragic and we got to pull this arrow out. You get an arrow wound back in the day like this.
Oh, Jesus.
That infection, the possibility that you will survive is probably statistically incredibly low.
Didn't they do, maybe I'm imagining this, but didn't they do crazy shit like dip arrows in shit and piss and stuff like that to make sure that, you know,
I don't know
if the arrow itself didn't kill them, then the infection certainly would.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know when or geographically where that all happened, but absolutely that did happen throughout history.
That's biological warfare right there.
Yes, it is.
It's definitely a form of early biological warfare.
But so like them not having to deal with that injury is weird to me. And then also like they fell into ice water, and I saw no fire being burnt after they fell into ice water.
Yep, that's
in
true.
The snowy mountains.
That's true. Yeah, there are things that you would think that they'd need to deal with that they don't really deal with in this movie. But it's a fairy tale, right?
But that's what I'm talking about. I love fantasy, but I like fantasy that goes to the effort to make things believable and realistic too. Like that deals with the reactions that humans might actually have. Because as we've talked about many times, good fantasy and science fiction should be talking about reality at its core. In some way.
And we haven't talked about that at all. And that I feel like a lot of people, generally accept that science fiction, especially hard science fiction, if you want to call it that, is a means for us to talk about like the human condition and to talk about, you know, things that are more political. And it's a way for you to hold a story up against our society and make statements about our society through storytelling. And I don't think that as many people hold fantasy to that standard, but I think that it exists in the same realm.
Right, of course it does.
And I think you should be able to do that. I mean, I feel like the oldest type of fantasy is fairy tales, is part of that oral tradition. And so much of that stuff was explanatory fables that would, you know, talk about society through the lens of morality and talk about society through the lens of, you know, explaining why things are that, you know, like myths.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Myths did that. Myths are like our earliest form of like fantasy, so to speak, storytelling.
Right.
And it's simply for lack of science and mathematics and things that those stories existed because people had questions and those were as good of an answer as they could get at the time.
Look, see, another person falls on their sword and dies.
Right.
Second time in the movie. And I think he was the guy that pushed the other guy that fell on the sword. So maybe we're supposed to see this as like his
cyclical or bookended
his
or
revenge.
Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
But and also we had a little moment in that scene where it looked like Navar was sad for the guard guy that got killed.
Oh, yeah.
Though he doesn't seem sad about any of the other ones that he kills. So, and he was captain of the guard previously, so we can assume some of these people were still his people and he knew them. So he should be sad, but he doesn't care about anyone
else. Which is like a layer of characterization that they don't explore at all. Like, you know, presumably, and I guess
they let him into the city too.
That's true. That's one moment they actually do. In one moment, he says, "You were, you know, I was once your captain and hopefully future captain. Like I guess he wants to get his fucking job back, which it is a desire that was not addressed until that moment before he walked into the cathedral.
But why do they hunt him then if they're just going to let him into the city?
I feel like that maybe we need like a tertiary character or something that's just like a low-level guard or something that really respects Navar because he was a great captain and a great leader or something. Right. But instead they're just, henchmen.
And when they need to be
henchmen.
Fighting him, they fight him. And when they don't, they don't.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, like even in a movie that we don't really like that much, Gladiator, they do explore that. They do explore the guy that was under Maximus, that kind of helped him even after Maximus's fall from grace, so to speak.
But so, okay, what else did I want to talk about? The bells. Why do they keep trying to ring the bells? They make that out to be such an important moment in this whole long extended battle we've been watching where he's like, no, because he sees the moon going over the sun and he's like, oh my gosh, the prophecy is real. We're going to be able to break the curse. And so then he doesn't want the bells to ring because he doesn't want Imperius to kill Ladyhawke. But the guards keep like running up, even when he kills one of them. They keep running up to ring the bells. What is this ceremony? Why do they need to ring the bells? Who the fuck cares?
I want to listen. Hold on. Yeah, you can totally hear the leather squeaking. Oh, I love that. That's such a little touch, and I don't know why it was brought to my attention, but watching this the other night, taking notes, the sound of the leather squeaking in the silence is really cool. And then I saw that this movie, the only Oscars that this movie were nominated for was sound editing and sound mixing. And I was like, yep, I would probably give them that. Because the sound in this movie is really, really good. And, just that sound of the leather was like, that's a touch that not everyone would think to add into this movie, I think.
Yeah. A line we missed that I really like when they're trying to get into the city and Imperius and Ladyhawke are the ones who are in the cart and the wolf. Navar is a wolf in a cage in the back of the cart. One of the guard comes up and he wants to kill the wolf. And he's like, never had the pleasure of killing a wolf before. And Imperius gets out of it by saying, how strange. That's exactly what the bishop said. Like,
clever.
Like he was delivering the wolf for the bishop to kill. Nice way to get out of that. That was clever.
I don't know that I would have been that fast, but I guess that's why he's a smart character.
Right.
Let's see. Oh, the breed of the horse that Navar rides in this movie is a Frisian stallion that originated in the Netherlands, which was also the native country of our actor here, Mr. Rutger Hauer. It was apparently a breed. The Frisian stallion was a breed popular among medieval knights. So it's she's appropriate. She's
got her Jess here, and she's going to walk over to the bishop and hand it to him.
Yep.
Which, I mean, I get it. He's the one who put the curse on her, so he's the one who symbolically restrained her. But literally, it was Navar that put a Jess on her and restrained her, and also ordered someone to kill her in case he died.
This movie was marketed interestingly. One of the posters for the film had a piece of like text on it that said, a crafty young pickpocket stole his way out of a tyrant's dungeon and plunged into an adventure beyond even his own wildest imaginations or wildest imaginings. And the strangest notion of all was that he was about to become a hero. Do you?
Nope.
I didn't think so.
Nope.
He doesn't really become a hero. In fact, he doesn't really.
I think throwing swords is really probably impossible.
Inefficient.
And that is the second time in this movie that we have seen Navar throw a sword.
The second time he's thrown that sword. He also threw a knife at a guy that was
the knife. No, I believe that. You can throw knives.
Yeah, you can totally throw knives.
I don't think you can really I'm sure there is someone out there who can prove me wrong and throw a sword and hit a target, but it just seems unlikely. Okay, because I don't want to miss it. I actually joked about it at the end of our last episode, and so I can't not say anything about it. Other things named Ladyhawke.
Okay.
So
Other things named
Ladyhawke with no E is a Canadian indie rock band.
Yes.
They had 2 songs.
Are you sure they don't have an E on it?
There's a different one. Ladyhawke with no E is a Canadian indie rock band.
Okay.
They had 2 songs in the 2000 movie The Thaw, which is that woolly mammoth movie with like the nasty creepy bugs that you came in. I was watching it.
Oh, I've never seen that.
No,
okay.
You saw me watching it around Halloween. It was like there were bugs and they were like infesting people. It's like a really half-hearted version of The Thing.
Okay.
Where people are like hiding if they're sick or not.
The Thing. Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, so they're an indie rock band. But the one that you should look for is Ladyhawke with an E, which is she is a New Zealand kind of pop rock singer-songwriter. And she's just really fun. She has a single called My Delirium that was her most popular, and I really like that song. I like other stuff she's done too.
Let's see. Alfred Molina. We talked about Alfred Molina. Alfred Molina and John Wood, who played the bishop, were both in the movie Chocolat. And then
I love that movie.
And then John Wood was also in War Games with Matthew Broderick. And Rutger Hauer was actually in 2 medieval adventure movies this same year. This and Paul Verhoeven's Flesh and Blood, or Flesh Plus Blood. I don't know. That's how it's stylized. But speaking of Flesh and Blood, 1985 seems to be peak adventure fantasy movie year. So we had this, Flesh and Blood, Legend, Red Sonja, The Black Cauldron, The Dungeon Master, and Barbarian Queen.
Man.
And that's just medieval fantasy. Bonus points for both Return to Oz and Ewoks, The Battle for Endor, which is totally a fantasy movie. It's way more a fantasy movie than it is a Star Wars movie, for sure. Which we also need to do on the show because we did the first one. Sequel month. # sequel month.
Okay, can we please talk about how right now they're having their dramatic kiss scene where they're both human again and yay, we can be together. I still think it would be a much better ending, much more correct if she was like, okay, look, we've got to hold on. We need to talk about some things. We're going to have a conversation. I'm not saying how it's going to go, but I'd like her to leave him at the end of this. I'm serious. No, like the fantasy romance lover in me loves this ending because it's what I want. Cathartically, this is what we want. But the reality is this movie's really fucking sexist and and he tried to kill her. Okay, guys, he tried to kill. He tied her to his arm and then tried to kill her when he thought he'd die.
Whether or not Navar kills the bishop, I don't see a version of this where they don't both get sentenced to horrible deaths, whether by this monarch or the next one.
Why does everyone just stand there?
They're just looking at him like, oh, well, he killed the bishop and they're in love. So he's definitely going to get his job back as captain of the guard, and whoever takes over as the next bishop, the next religious leader of this, theocratic monarchy.
It's not like she was a princess or anything. No, she was just the daughter of a baron.
Yeah, who died in the Crusades. I mean,
so like her existence doesn't mean that like she trumps the bishop or whatever. So yeah, they're both gonna die, guys. They're both destined to die at this point, like for real. And everybody like just standing there and letting them have their kissy scene at the end and whatever. It's very strange.
Oh my God.
All the guards have decided they're cool with it now? Okay, well, the bishop's dead. It's okay.
This movie is too long. Final thoughts on this, because this episode's too long, because this movie's too long. Such is the nature of a commentary track podcast. But still, this movie's not terrible, but I don't know. It's definitely too long. And we didn't talk about it during the scene, but that last scene just drags on forever. He's fighting the captain of the guard. I don't know. Do I like this movie? No. But do I hate this movie? Nah. It's just, it exists.
My thoughts on this movie is that superficially, I love this movie. Superficially, I love it. I love The Curse. It's so fantastically tragic fantasy romance, and it's just great. And they're both very pretty, and it's a pretty movie, and Mouse is a fun character and a good cipher for the audience, and I love fairy tales and etc. But if I think hard about this movie, then it is so fucking sexist that it makes me sick. So I have a really hard time loving this movie.
I think you like putting on this movie, but you don't like watching this movie.
Yes.
Like really watching this movie.
And I need to put it on with a different score too, because I really, really dislike the score. So that's hard. It's hard. I want to love Ladyhawke so bad, and it hurts my soul.
Anyway.
Okay. Well, that's it for this time. As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at popcornpoops, or personally, I'm at J. Casper Kramer.
I'm at Dusty Cram Cram.
You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, or follow our Twitch channel, Pixel Poops, at twitch.tv/thepixelpoops.
For the time being, that may change in the near future.
You can go to our shop and purchase things. You can donate at our donut button on our website. You can go to audibletrial.com/popcornpoops and sign up for a free 30-day trial in which you will receive a free audiobook.
And those are all great ways to support the show.
And every week we have a poo pal who we like to highlight here on the podcast. This week we have Soiled Restroom Cinema, who you can find at signalsoffury.com. So, next week, Dustin,
we are continuing #80s Fantasy Month with Matthew Robbins' 1981 film Dragon Slayer, which should be a lot of fun. I think you have opinions about that movie, as do I. And we'll get into that next week on the show. But as for now, that's all for this week. So until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
We are the Popcorn Poops.